The West is big. And my channel is dedicated to helping you explore it. This is the most comprehensive guide to the outdoor lover's paradise of Moab, Utah. This little town of 5,000 attracts millions of visitors each year. Arches National Park is the biggest draw, but there are many others. A little further up the road, there's the amazing views in Canyonlands National Park and in nearby Dead Horse Point State Park. You can use your wheels to see the scenery, including the self-propelled type, as well as the big, knobby, tired variety. But there are also short and long hiking trails. You can float lazily through a canyon, or not so lazily on the Colorado River. For those who like heights, there are 500-foot cliffs, and the Fisher Towers just waiting to be climbed. And you can even learn about geologic and human history. The town of Moab is quite a little gem, with accommodations for the budget camper, as well as for those looking for a place that's as special as the scenery. There are restaurants of all types, and even a few night spots. And if you didn't bring your mountain bike, 4x4, or other gear, you can rent it all here. The area has become so popular that you now need a reservation just to enter Arches National Park, and they can be hard to get. But I'll tell you how to get one. But first I'm going to show you why Arches is so popular. Now is a good time to subscribe to my channel that's dedicated to helping you explore the West. I really need about 100,000 subs to keep this thing going, because these things are very time-consuming to produce. And please write a comment. I read them all. Maybe let me know what I should include in the next update of this series. I know that many of you are planning a road trip to all of Utah's mighty 5 national parks, and I have produced a video that covers all of that too. But now, let's start with Arches. No Grand Circle tour is complete without spending at least a day in Arches National Park. It's a delightfully colorful place where 100 million years of erosion create ever-changing natural sculptures and architecture. The park is small enough to drive through in a few hours, but it's intriguing enough that some spend a week or two exploring it on foot, on bicycles, and on off-road vehicles, in search of adventure in the land of more than 2,000 arches. Because of our limited time, we'll explain how to make the most out of about a day and a half in the park. The entrance is just 4 miles from the center of town. After paying the National Park entry fee, it's a good idea to stop at the visitor center to learn about the area you're about to explore. The bulk of the park is on a plateau, several hundred feet above the visitor center. The road switches back twice as it climbs the Moab Fault. A sign near the top states that 6 million years ago, the rock layers on this side of the valley dropped 2,600 feet lower than those on the other side of the valley. Once on the plateau, the park road winds its way north past 400 to 500 foot sandstone monoliths that were pushed up through the surrounding landscape. The first large pullout is for a place called Park Avenue. The high stone walls reminded early explorers of the famous New York landmark. It's hard to understand just how big everything is until you see someone wandering in the rocks. There is a short trail, but summer temperatures are often in the 90s or higher, so you need to bring plenty of water. From the viewpoint, you get your first look at the different rock in the park. The arches tend to form in the Entrada sandstone. Here it's way up near the top. Throughout the park, you'll see signs stating, "Don't bust the crust." It's alive. This refers to microorganisms that live in the soil. It takes 100 years for tiny black bacteria to create enough soil for even the most basic plants. And one step from your boot could kill it. So don't bust the crust. A little further down the road, we come to the La Salle Mountain viewpoint. Beyond the outcrop are petrified yellowish sand dunes. In the background, to the east, the La Salles rise 13,000 feet, so snow covers them most of the time. To the north, there's a great view of several more features. These are the Three Gossips. This is the Organ and the Tower of Babel. While we drive to our next stop, I'll try to explain how the landscape got this way. It all started about 300 million years ago, when this tectonic plate was closer to the equator. This land was covered by seawater, so much seawater that 7,900 feet of mostly salt but also potash and gypsum, accumulated before the sea dried up. For much of the next 100 to 150 million years, hundreds of feet of sand and other soft materials built up on top of the salt, during a time when this region was dry and much like today's Sahara Desert. By this time, the ancestral Rocky Mountains were eroding away, providing plenty of overburden material which helped turn the ancient desert sand to stone. The weight of the sand and the mountain debris put pressure on the underlying salt layer. Under pressure, salt becomes a semi-fluid. It moves and oozes, kind of like pushing on the center of a tube of toothpaste. Because the weight of the sand and other overburden varied from place to place, in some places the ground sank, and in others it pushed up massive slabs of sandstone, like the one seen here. Starting 100 million years ago, the erosion process began to take over, and the tectonic plate began moving north. All this movement caused many vertical cracks that created giant blocks of sandstone, as well as thinner stone slabs. This can be seen quite easily from the air in the Devil's Garden. Over time, the cracks became wider, and with the help of the erosional forces of water, ice, and wind, the tall slabs began to look like the fins we see in the park today. In many places, erosional forces and waterborne chemical reactions further weakened the stone, causing holes to form in the fins. When a hole has a span of at least 3 feet, it's classified as an arch. This process has occurred at least 2,000 times in the park, and it continues to happen. And from time to time, arches do collapse. That's the end of the lecture, and just in time. We've reached our next stop. This was the original entrance to the park. It's called Balanced Rock. It's 128 feet tall. There used to be a smaller balanced rock nearby, but it fell over in the 70s. One day, this one will fall over too. A bit further down the road is a turnoff for the windows section. Once again, the view out the windscreen is quite good. The road generally goes southeast at this point, so the best light is in the afternoon. With the windows and double arch, this is a very popular area, and it can be difficult to find a parking spot most of the day. After a short walk from the parking lot, there's a fork in the trail. To the right is Turret Arch. To the left is the windows. The north window is pretty impressive in the evening, but in the morning, if you climb through it, you'll see one of the park's iconic views. That's Turret Arch as seen through the north window just after sunrise. To get to this spot, well, it requires a bit of a scramble. It's not easy or even very safe. In fact, the man in this shot decided it was too dangerous for him to try to get to this camera position. Once here and after your nerves have settled, you get to appreciate just how big and incredible these formations are. Across the parking lot is another well-known feature, Double Arch. You may recognize it from a scene in the Indiana Jones movies. With a little effort, you can climb right into it. A further 2.5 miles up the road, there's a parking lot for the most famous arch in the park, Delicate Arch. There aren't many spaces, and they fill up early. And at sunset, they're almost impossible to come by. But when this lot is full, there is another way to see the arch. About a mile down the road, there's another parking area for the lower Delicate Arch viewpoints. One of the viewpoints is near the parking lot, and the other is up a short trail. There are nice views from both. But it's better when you're standing next to it. And to get there, you start from the main parking area. I'll tell you about the old cabin in a second. But just past it, there's a spur trail to a wall full of petroglyphs, made by Ute Indians. The trail winds its way over what they call slick rock, which is a sandstone that isn't slick at all, unless it's wet. Parts of the trail are hard to follow as it steadily rises about 500 feet. It gets interesting near the top, where it follows a narrow shelf. And when you turn the corner, there's a great view of the 46-foot-high symbol of Utah, Delicate Arch. A small cabin near the trailhead was built by the Wolf family, who settled here in the late 1800s. They managed to eke out a living here for more than 20 years. Delicate Arch is 1.5 miles and almost 500 feet up the mostly slick rock trail, which, by the way, isn't slippery. It's more like sandpaper. This is the most recognized view in Utah. It's even on the state license plate. The 63-foot tall arch is at the edge of a large sandstone bowl that has been hollowed out by swirling wind and water. Again, the LaSalle Mountains provide the backdrop. At sunset, this is the perfect place to be. If the main Delicate Arch parking lot is full, there's another way to see the famous arch. Head a mile or so down the road to the lower Delicate Arch trailhead. This trail is less traveled, and you can't get very close to it from here. But it's still amazingly odd to see a large stone arch perched in a bowl on the edge of a sheer cliff. The road next leads to the Fiery Furnace. Here you can take a ranger-led hike, but you have to purchase your tickets in advance to guarantee a spot. And those tickets sell out fast. I got lucky the first time I went to the park, but I failed every time since. So I'm going to show you a video made by the Park Service.
Hi, I'm Rob Lorenz at Arches National Park. Arches is known for its vibrant color, whimsical shapes, and vast desert landscape. In this jubilee of red rock and blue sky, the Fiery Furnace takes its place as one of the more unique attractions of the park. Its long parallel rows of alternating canyons and fins create a maze of rock that, when seen from above, makes it seem like the landscape's been scraped with a giant rake. Here at ground level, this wonderland of rock beckons visitors seeking shade, solitude, and adventure. Because the Fiery Furnace harbors rare plants and fragile soils in a confined area, the National Park Service limits the number of people that can enter it each day. In order to visit the Fiery Furnace, you must obtain a permit at the visitor center or join a ranger on a guided walk. However, a guided walk through the Fiery Furnace isn't for everyone. The tour route is roughly 2 miles long and takes about 3 hours to complete, so a moderate level of physical fitness is needed. Along the way, you'll encounter a few body-scraping passageways, exposure to steep drop-offs, lots of rock scrambling, and tricky sections that require using your hands, feet, and even your rear end to maneuver. While injuries are rare, some areas may make people with a fear of heights or narrow spaces uncomfortable. Due to the difficulty and length of the tour, children under 5 years of age are not permitted. Believe it or not, there are absolutely no water fountains, snack machines, or bathrooms in the Fiery Furnace, so you'll have to make do with whatever you can carry from the trailhead. Speaking of which, you should plan on bringing at least 1 quart or liter of water, a snack, some sun protection, and an extra layer of clothes. Scared yet? You shouldn't be. You'll forget all these minor inconveniences once you're winding your way through this improbable landscape of fins, spires, and hidden arches. Fiery Furnace tours are offered daily from March through October, and tickets are usually purchased online. Now, these walks often fill up a couple months in advance, so it's best to plan early to reserve your spot. On behalf of the National Park Service, we hope you join us soon in the Fiery Furnace.
Okay, now back to my video. We're now on our way to the Devil's Garden. On the way, you may want to stop at Skyline Arch. It's one of the biggest in the park. As you might expect, it's also hard to find a parking spot in the Devil's Garden. If you find a spot, take the easy hike to the largest natural rock span in the world. The trail is sandy, and on hot days the trip can be tiring, so it's always a good idea to bring plenty of water. Soon, there's a view of fins in the distance. About a mile in, the trail forks to the left, and you can see the largest natural rock span in the world, Landscape Arch. In the afternoon, it's in shadow, but in the morning, it's lit. From base to base, it's 306 feet across, and no, you're not allowed to walk across it. Many years ago, a man died trying. Beyond Landscape Arch, there are many more arches along the trail. At about the 3-mile point, you get the chance to walk on top of a fin. It's a pretty unique experience. If you plan your trip very well, you can do all of the things described in this segment in a day to a day and a half. Although weather and crowds may force you to improvise. But no matter what you do, I'll bet that Arches will be one of the highlights of your Grand Circle trip. For those of you interested in photography, here's a review of my favorite photo ops in the park. In addition to a good camera and tripod, you should also have an app on your phone that tells you where the sun will be at any time, anywhere. I use Helios for the iPhone. You should scout your locations on the phone before you start your trip. Around noon, most of the wall is in the sun. And in late afternoon, the good light will be hitting the largest wall. And that's when this shot was taken. At Balanced Rock, there are times in the morning when it can be backlit, so it's safer to shoot in the afternoon. The snowpack LaSalle Mountains will also be lit in the afternoon. As we said, it's best to shoot the back side of the north window just after sunrise. But the side facing the parking lot looks great in the afternoon. Often tour groups of up to 20 people are here well before sunrise, leaving no room for many who want to get to this spot. This shot was taken near the windows. All I did was turn around and point the lens towards Double Arch. The main park road looks great in the late morning to early evening when heading north into the park. Going in the other direction, it's backlit in the evening. The best light is also on the fiery furnace in the afternoon and evening. To capture landscape arch in the sun, you'll have to hike a mile or so in the morning. In the afternoon it's backlit, and it's even hard to see the arch. The best time to shoot delicate arch is at sunset. If the weather's nice, there will be a crowd, but there are plenty of good places to put your tripod. But still, it's best to be early. Again, remember to scout the location using a map or preferably a tool like Helios on the iPhone. It will tell you when and where the sun will rise and set. It'll really help you get a nice shot. Well, I hope that gives you an idea of why you need a reservation ticket just to get into Arches. It really is an amazing place. But you do need one of these tickets to get into the park, and the Park Service has made a video to tell you how to do it.
Hi there! If you're planning to visit Arches between April 1st and October 31st, you'll need to purchase a timed entry ticket to enter the park between the hours of 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. Tickets will be released on the first of the month, 3 months in advance. In order to visit, follow these 2 steps.
Secure your timed entry tickets in advance. Timed entry tickets will only be available online or over the phone from recreation.gov. Purchase your park pass or pay the entrance fee when you arrive.
We encourage you to plan ahead and be prepared well before your visit. If you didn't get a reservation in advance, a limited number of next day tickets will be released at 6 p.m. Mountain Time daily. Just remember, you can only get these over the phone or on recreation.gov. Tickets will not be available at the entrance station. Didn't get a ticket at all? You can still enter the park before 7 a.m. and after 4 p.m. daily. Timed entry tickets help evenly pace visitation into the park to lessen congestion and improve visitor experiences. For more information, including step-by-step instructions, a full ticket release schedule, and frequently asked questions, visit go.nps.gov/Arches ticket. See you soon!
And by the way, I tried this myself. It was in early May, and I was able to get a ticket for the following week. It was 2 or 3 in the afternoon, but I was able to get a ticket. Of course, there's more than one park in the Moab area. Canyonlands National Park is just 30 miles away, on top of a nearly 2,000-foot mesa. And if you and your vehicle are up to it, there's a really fun way to get back to town. Canyonlands is an immense wilderness of cliffs, mesas, and of course canyons. It was shaped by the Colorado and Green Rivers into 3 separate districts. They are all primitive with no potable water. The districts are widely separated by fascinating and monumental natural features, and there are no roads linking them together. The Needles District Visitor Center is about 80 miles southish of Moab. Hiking trails are the main attraction here, but it's a place only for those with the ability to be self-reliant, as well as being physically fit. If you like being isolated and seeing what few have, it's a great place to be in the middle of nowhere while being someplace incredible. In case you're such a person, I've tacked on a National Park Service video about hiking in this remote area of the park. It's one of the last segments of this video. The Maze District is even more remote. It's over 130 miles from Moab. The roads in this district are 4x4 only rough tracks, and they also require that you have a great deal of self-reliance and skill just to get in and out of it. And if you need a rescue, it will take many hours and be very expensive. The Park Service made a video about this place too, and it's a pretty good one, so I tacked it on the end too. The rivers in the park are categorized as a separate water district. You can easily spend a couple of weeks exploring each district, but we're going to spend our time in the most popular, the Island in the Sky. The Island in the Sky is, of course, a mesa. It's only 30 miles or 35 minutes from Moab. The road rises about 1,800 feet to an elevation of about 6,000 feet. And it isn't quite an island. A narrow 42-foot strip connects it to the main mesa. This sliver of a connection is called a neck. The road is so well designed that you won't have a clue that you're only a few feet away from a very long drop. Sheer cliffs at the edge of the mesa provide spectacular views at several viewpoints. This is the Green River Overlook. About 1,200 feet below, there's a broad shelf, technically called a bench. It's made of a much harder sandstone compared to the formations that, eroded away. Near the cliff edge, the rock looks almost like a beach. And millions of years ago, it was. This was part of an inland sea. Since then, the inland sea that divided the continent disappeared as tectonic forces pushed up a plate, creating a flat plain. More recently, the Colorado Plateau began to rise, allowing the rivers to shape the land in quite interesting ways. It's a harsh place, and it's not surprising that it was one of the last places in the continental U.S. to be explored and mapped. At the end of the island mesa, the viewpoint is appropriately named Grand View. On a clear day, you can see almost 100 miles in almost any direction. And that thin line is for heavy-duty four-wheel drive vehicles only. It's the 100-mile-long White Rim Trail. Some of those surface scars are old mining roads that were made during the 1940s and 50s to help aid the search for uranium. We're looking south, where a few miles from here the two rivers combine into the fast-moving Colorado River. You can hike to the confluence from the Needles District. A few miles south of the confluence, there's a 14-mile-long section called Cataract Canyon. If you take a multi-day float trip, you can go through its Class 5 rapids. In 1869, John Wesley Powell and his team were the first white men to go down the river, and they managed to do it in wooden boats. The Park Service made a video to inform those thinking about doing this float trip. It's about 8 minutes long, and I tagged it on here. If you're not interested, just skip ahead.
These two rivers combine forces to carve Cataract Canyon, one of the country's most legendary stretches of whitewater. During peak runoff in a big snow year, Cataract roars to life with the biggest and most difficult rapids anywhere in the Southwest, where massive waves can swallow a J-rig whole. Later in the summer, water levels drop, but the challenges do not. Rocks previously buried by towering waves are uncovered, revealing precise technical lines that will challenge even the most skilled boater. Come high or low water, this is a serious expedition on a remote river where rescue is far from guaranteed. As you plan for Cataract Canyon, here are a few tips we hope will help you come prepared and self-reliant, and reward your effort with an unforgettable wilderness experience. On both the Colorado and Green Rivers, launch ramps are outside the park boundaries. While there is no formal check-in process with a park ranger, you should be prepared to present your permit and all the required equipment at some point on the trip. Keep the boat ramp clear by preparing all of your equipment away from the launch areas. There are no designated campsites along the rivers in Canyonlands, and all sites are first come, first serve. Below the confluence on river left, there is a large sign warning about the rapids just a few miles downstream. Plan on stopping here and use the campsite registration box.
And then Carl's house?
This system is a courtesy to others and does not guarantee a site, but it does help other boaters plan their stops in advance. This applies to both canoeists as well as groups continuing down Cataract Canyon. During late summer and fall, when the river is low, sandbars are plentiful and make ideal camps. However, during high water, camps can be difficult to find, especially for large groups. If you have a small group, choose a small campsite. Below the rapids on Lake Powell, camping is also severely limited based on lake levels, erosion, and the dynamic river channel carving through silt banks. You may have to climb the cut banks to the benches above the river for camping. If you find a good camp early, consider stopping. There are no guarantees of something better downstream. Arriving at a pristine campsite at the end of a long day is the ultimate backcountry reward. When it feels like you are the first person to set foot on that beach, it is because groups before you worked hard to minimize their impact, and you can leave that same experience for the next visitor. We recommend using a kitchen mat to keep camps as clean as possible. Food scraps should never be discarded or buried, as they may attract wildlife like bears and skunks. Wastewater from cooking should be strained and then poured into the main river. Keep side streams free of soaps and oils. Food and trash should be secured at all times to prevent birds, ants, and mice from being attracted to popular camps. All river runners are required to carry out their solid human waste. Toilet systems must securely contain human waste in a sealed, watertight container. This is most easily accomplished by using a washable and reusable toilet system with RV dump fittings. Another option is to use commercially available human waste bags and then store them in a dry bag or tube and labeled human waste. Liquid waste goes directly into the river to keep beaches clean and odor-free. Only driftwood may be collected and burned for firewood. The fire must be fully contained at all times inside a rigid, durable metal fire pan. All fire debris and ash must be packed out, so keep fires small and avoid half-burned logs. Fire blankets are recommended to make for a fast and simple cleanup. As you rig, make one last sweep of your camp, disperse any unused firewood, and leave your camp better than you found it. In recent years, lower lake levels have caused several rapids to re-emerge between Imperial Rapid and Gypsum Canyon. From the last rapid in Cataract Canyon to the takeout at height is almost 30 miles. The amount of current varies dramatically based on lake level and river flows. Consider navigating this stretch early in the morning. The lake is notorious for afternoon winds that completely halt downriver progress. If you use a motor, be sure to have valid state registration, decals, placards, and a serviceable fire extinguisher. Minimize your wake and be courteous to other boaters. Conditions at the Lake Powell takeout are always changing depending on the current lake level. Contact park rangers for the most up-to-date information. When hiking, always walk on marked trails, solid rock, or in sandy washes. Biological soil crust and desert vegetation is very fragile. These soil crusts are complex living organisms and the foundation of the desert ecosystem. One careless step not only destroys these fragile organisms, but increases erosion and leads to unnecessary unofficial trails.
I'm hoping to do that trip one day. And this is a shout out to one of the local outfitters. Maybe you should comp me a trip. I'll do a video on it. Okay, now let's get back to the island in the sky. Near Grandview, there's another overlook called the Orange Cliffs. It provides a great view to the west. From here you can see the Maze District, which is far off in the distance. This is a great spot to watch the sunset. Another great sunset spot is the Holman Springs overlook. It's on the road to the Upheaval Dome. If you've been paying attention, you know that uplift has played a big role in shaping this park. A 1-mile round-trip hike takes you to the rim of what looks to be a crater. It has a view of the Upheaval Dome, which is a geologic anomaly. In the rest of the park, there is geologic order. Younger rocks are on top of older rocks. There is little folding of the rock layers, which means that the area has been pretty stable for millions of years. The Upheaval Dome is quite different. It's about 3 miles across, and the rocks in the center are a place of dramatic disorder. In the center, the rocks are all tilted in weird ways, and they shouldn't be. And what's weirder is they came from thousands of feet below. And even the experts can't agree on how they got up here. Some say that since the dome looks like an impact crater from a meteorite, well, that's what they think it is. Others say that it was formed by one of the area's many salt domes, which are remnants of that old ancient sea I talked about earlier. But so far, nobody knows who's right. It's just a mystery. Canyonlands is known for its spectacular, immense views of distant landscapes. But with the signature view in the island of the sky, there's a twist. This is Mesa Arch. It's just a quarter mile from the main road. And on a cloudy late afternoon, it may not look that special. But at sunrise, it's stunning. Hundreds of people often gather around this spot, well before sunrise, and they're all trying to squeeze into this same spot. And some won't make it. Most are here with the goal of getting a shot like this, or this. And if you have sharp elbows, you may even be able to capture a shot like this. The crowd is very international. It's sad, but few Americans take the time to see this wonderful land. An hour or so after sunrise, the crowds are gone. And this becomes one of the rare places with the sound of silence. You can hear yourself blink here. The views of Canyonlands are evocative. They draw you into the landscape. And there's a place where you can do just that. This is the Shafer Trail, as seen from the neck in the Island of the Sky district of Canyonlands. The first drop descends about 1,100 feet in a series of switchbacks. And believe it or not, you can safely drive it in your own SUV. And that's just what we're about to do. To get there, take Highway 313 towards the Canyonland entrance. The trailhead is a couple of miles before the Island in the Sky Visitor Center. When the pavement ends, the road is still flat, as if to give you more time to get used to driving on the loose sandy surface. Then there's an impressive overlook just before the trail cuts into the cliff face. We recorded nearly the entire 1.5-hour drive, and in order to show you as much of it as possible, I've sped up most of the driving footage. I did the trail a few years ago, and this time I didn't stop as often. I know it can look scary, but the road is surprisingly wide. It's even safe to pass. The first time I remember being, well, not really scared. Let's call it intimidated. The drop-off off the driver's window is about 1,100 feet, and it's very steep. But this time, before starting out, I did what is recommended. I checked on the trail's condition with the ranger at the visitor center. I learned that because the trail is so popular, the top portion is graded more often than it was in the past. The ranger actually said that the steep switchback section was the easiest part of the trip. I also grabbed a map. The dirt trail is 17 miles long. About halfway through, it changes names to the Potash Road. At the river, the trail joins the paved Highway 279 for several miles back to Moab. I've always done the trail in May, and it's always been dry. But after a rain, the trail may not be passable. The Canyonlands website has a road conditions page. Go to it before you head out. It has handy info, especially if you're new to this sort of thing. Scroll down to the Islands in the Sky section to check to see if there's any info on the Shafer Trail. As I write this, the Potash Road section is in rough shape, meaning that a passenger car might not be able to make it, making it even more important that you talk to a ranger before you head down. He may recommend that once you drive down, you just turn around and drive back up. But every time I've done it, it's been fine. The trail starts at about 5,900 feet. I've done the trail 3 times, twice in a 2-wheel drive truck-based SUV, and once in a Subaru Forester. And every time I've done it, the road was fine. But late in the season, or after a rain, the road might be too rough for an SUV that was designed to do nothing more than go back and forth to a kale shop. From the trailhead at 5,920 feet above sea level, we'll drop about 1,900 feet before getting back to Moab. The trail drops gradually. Most of the ride is uneventful. You can hardly tell that you're descending until you get to a switchback. By the way, if you don't want to put wear and tear on your own vehicle, you can rent a 4x4 Jeep in Moab. This was originally a cattle trail. Local ranchers called the Shafer brothers built it about 100 years ago to get their cattle to market. It was expanded greatly in the 1940s, when it was used by uranium prospectors. That's also when many of the roads on the canyon floor were cut. Many of these still scar the landscape. By the 50s, the Shafer Trail was nearly forgotten. Like the rest of the area, it became a part of the national park in 1964. The trail became popular only recently. In 1980, only 57,000 people visited all of Canyonlands. Today, nearly 1 million come every year. Though the view is amazing, the drive is remarkably normal. There's never an uh-oh moment, or even a slight slip of the wheels. After about 10 minutes, the initial ascent is about over. It was almost too quick, though I never got over 15 miles an hour. Here's what I said about it at the time.
Well, that was it. That was pretty easy. We dropped 11 to 1,200 feet in about 15 minutes at the most, it looks like. Didn't get a chance to look at the view. Basically, I'm looking at the road about 15 to 20 feet in front of me. It's pretty darn interesting, let me tell you. Thoroughly enjoying it.
Mountain bikers from around the world come to Moab, and some even try to pedal up this road. As a cyclist myself, I ask if the rider needs food or water. It's over 90 degrees, and sometimes they just might need it. There are several connecting trails in the canyon. The longest is the White Rim Road. It's over 100 miles long, winding its way across the caprock, often just a few feet from the canyons that are cut by the Colorado and Green Rivers, which are hundreds of feet below. The White Rim Road can be seen from many of Canyonland's viewpoints. Here it is from the Green River overlook. There are few signs on the trail, but they do helpfully exist at this T intersection. The road ahead is the White Rim. The Shafer Trail goes to the left. The ranger I talked to said the White Rim Trail was safe for two-wheel drive vehicles like mine, up to Muscleman Arch, whatever that is. He says you'll know it when you see it. Well, I decided to go exploring. Oddly, the White Rim rises slightly. This took a toll on a couple of cyclists. These were a part of a tour group with a support vehicle. Because I hadn't studied this part of the map, I was expecting the trail to be near the rim. It wasn't. And it became sandier. This is not a place to get stuck. The trail info sheet states that it's best to take enough food and water for a day or two in case you break down and have to be rescued. It also claims that towing charges could easily reach $1,000. At a wide spot in the road, next to the cyclist support vehicle, I decided to head back. I learned later that Muscleman Arch was a further 40 minutes down the road. A mile or so later, I rejoined the Shafer Trail. A wooden sign claims that it's 32 miles to Moab via the Potash Road. I've traveled about 8 miles so far, so the trail map, well, it's a bit misleading. A few hundred yards later, it starts to get rough. The path narrows and gets very rough as you descend into Shafer Canyon. It's here that you realize why you need a high-clearance vehicle. Going slow and dodging the largest of the sharp rocks is critical. It becomes evident that the ranger was right. The top section is the easy part. Then there's a fairly flat clearing with nice views. This is a great spot to take your time, or even stop to enjoy the scenery. It gets rough again as you cross a wash. During a rain, this part can be treacherous, or even impassable. The drive up is also a challenge. These motorcyclists asked me about the part I just drove down, and they shared what was next for me. The trail is now on a broad shelf above the Colorado River. The cliffs rise 12 to 1,500 feet, and the view is amazing. It took 45 minutes to get here, including the White Rim excursion. From Dead Horse Point, high above, you can see this part of the road. This is the only overlook on the river, so it's worth spending some time exploring it and taking it all in. When Buzz Aldrin stepped on the moon, he described what he saw as magnificent desolation. I can think of no better way to describe this spot. It makes the rough ride well worth the effort. In the other direction, in the layers, you see millions of years of geology and Earth history. A little farther down the road, a faded spur trail heads to the right and provides another view of the river. Unfortunately, I didn't know this until I saw the spur trail from Dead Horse Point State Park the next day. Now that you know it's here, you should take it. From Dead Horse Point, you can see the next few miles of the road and a few more spur trails. By this time, the trail has changed names. It's now called the Potash Road and a portion of the White Rim Road. The road meanders for several miles. By the way, we're no longer in Canyonlands National Park. In fact, we haven't been since just before the river overlook. On some maps, the road even has a number. It's called County Road 142. When the landscape opens up, again, you get that feeling of magnificent desolation. It's another good spot to stop and take a few pictures. As you go over a crest, there's a brief hint of blue on the horizon. They are potash evaporation pools from a mining operation. They provide a few of the non-tourism related jobs in Moab. They also provide nice contrast to the landscape. The road ends down at river level, so there are still several hundred feet to drop. And drop it does. It was too rough for the stabilization system, so sorry for the bumps. There are other trails down here, and there are no signs, so it's easy to get a bit lost, especially when heading in the other direction. Telephone poles are a sign that it's almost over. There are only a few miles of dirt road left. There's one more interesting photo op just before leaving the dirt. This balanced rock is about the size of a small bungalow. When you hit the pavement, you're on Highway 279. It starts just after the boat dock on the Colorado River. Suddenly, there's more greenery along the road. The Colorado is just to the right. Then there are great sandstone cliffs. This area is called Wall Street. Look for a sign pointing to Indian writing. Several feet above the road, in the dark desert varnish, the ancients left their mark. Most depict animals and those who hunted them. You may be wondering why they're so high off the ground. Well, the natural level of the dirt was below the area of the desert varnish. The dirt was removed when they built Highway 279. A little further down the road is the rock climbing area. This is the easy section, where local outfitters train first-timers to climb these nearly vertical walls. It seems fitting to end a journey that began by descending a cliff by watching someone climb one. There are just a few more miles back to Moab, and this will give you plenty of time to reflect. In just a couple of hours, you've descended over 1,900 feet on a road that was carved into a cliff. You've spent time in a harsh, pristine, former ranch with 1,200-foot-tall stone walls that were once used as a natural corral. You've seen how resources are mined. You've seen ancient writing. And you've seen how some cheat gravity. All in all, not a bad way to spend an hour and a half to 3 hours. Many Moab visitors just go to the national parks, but it's also home to some of the best mountain biking trails in the country. And for those who prefer things with engines, there's lots of places for off-road adventures. There's even great rock climbing, and there's one of my favorite places, Dead Horse Point State Park. For photographers like me, there are few better places to put your tripod. To get to Dead Horse, take 191 north, then take a left on 313. It shares the road with Canyonlands. Take the first left and continue until the road ends. The park is at the end of a several-mile-long butte that hovers above a landscape shaped by time and the Colorado River. The park has campsites and a few yurts for glampers, if glampers don't mind a 200-foot walk to a bathroom or a water spigot. There's a visitor center with helpful rangers and a few snacks. It's a popular place, but I've never had a problem with parking, which is not the case in the national parks. At the end of the mesa, there's a short, paved walkway to one of my favorite viewpoints. I've been here many times, and it never ceases to amaze. The light changes throughout the day. This was shot in the afternoon. Even on a hazy day, the landscape is incredible. Looking east, there's a glimpse of the Potash Ponds. Beyond them, the afternoon sun lights the snow-capped La Salle Mountains, 27 miles away. The view south isn't bad either. Somewhere down there, and off in the distance, the Green River joins the Colorado. But the best view is to the southwest, towards Canyonlands. That's the Colorado River down there. It in size, that horseshoe bend, as the Colorado Plateau rose over millions of years. And that road, it's our old friend, the Shafer Trail. We're standing at almost 6,000 feet, about 2,000 feet above the river. But this viewpoint isn't my favorite place to put the tripod. Actually, there are several others, but they require a bit of a scramble. And if you try to do this, be sure to walk only on the rocks to avoid killing the cryptobiotic soil. The plants and creatures who live here have a hard enough time, so please don't make it harder for them. Also, don't walk in the potholes, and they're just about everywhere. Because even when they're dry, they are full of little creatures that only come to life when the rains come. And it's best not to bring your dog, but if you must, the same rules apply. Don't let them destroy the homes of these hardy creatures. I've only been here for one sunset, but they tell me it gets pretty crowded, and at night, this is a great place to watch the stars. My favorite time to be here is sunrise. I'm rarely alone, as other shutterbugs cling to the cliffs. Often it's one of my places with the sound of silence. It's very rare to find a place so quiet, with a view that goes out for 100 miles. One morning I heard an eagle flap its wings. It was 100 feet below me. This is a special place. Beyond the bend is Canyonlands and Mesa Arch. It was from here that I first saw the Shafer Trail, and I knew that I had to drive it. As you might suspect, a place as scenic as this has been discovered by Hollywood. Several movies were shot here. This is roughly where Thelma and Louise drove off that cliff. There are 8 miles of hiking trails in the park, but staring into this landscape is my favorite activity. We're about 40 minutes from Moab, so camping up here makes the sunrise shoots a little bit easier. The sites can be booked in advance, and as I write this in mid-June, there were several spaces available in mid-July, just a month out. All the bookings must be made online, and the process is pretty straightforward. The park's website is full of valuable information, and it has a nice video too, much of which was shot with a drone. As an FAA-certified drone pilot myself, I asked if that was legal. Well, it is, but only between November and February, and you have to buy a permit to do it. By the way, they tell me it's very crowded around Thanksgiving. In fact, the busy times for this park are really in the spring and the fall. The summers, well, they can be rather hot. Like Canyonlands, you don't need a reservation to go to Dead Horse Point. You can just drive up and pay the fee. The gate is manned, they'd, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. I hope you can see why Dead Horse Point is one of my favorite places to photograph. And when in Moab, it's something everyone must see. And now, as promised, I'm going to take you to a place where you can do some real rock climbing. Back in the olden days, the folks used to take us on long, scenic drives, just for the fun of it. A few miles north, there's a great road to carry on that tradition. It's called Highway 128. National Geographic called it spectacular. The road S's its way along the river and through a canyon for almost 26 miles. A Moab bike trail continues between the road and the river. The closest commercial airport to Moab is in Grand Junction, Colorado. This is the scenic way to get there. The canyon gets wider past Red Cliffs Lodge and Resort. This is a great place to float or paddle down the river. Many of the flat areas near the river are used for farming, with help of irrigation from the river. We're now in the Castle Valley. In Hollywood loves these roads. One of them leads to another called the Professor Valley, which was used in City Slickers 2, Austin Powers, and many other Hollywood movies. Near mile marker 21, there's a small sign pointing east to the Fisher Towers. They were named after an 1880s pioneer. This is a BLM recreation area with a small campground and a pit toilet, but no water. There are a number of hiking trails, but since the 1960s, the main activity here is rock climbing. There are small spires to learn on, and there are much bigger ones for the highly skilled. A further 11 miles up Highway 128. There's another old landmark. Pull over just before crossing the bridge. Believe it or not, this relic was once the longest suspension bridge in Utah, and it held that title until April of 2008, when it was destroyed by a grass fire, started by a small boy who was playing with matches. It was called the Dooley Bridge when it was built in 1916. It had a 500-foot-long wooden driving surface that was only 8 feet wide. More recently, it was used as a bike trail. This scenic highway continues for another 20 miles. It's a great way to spend an evening. So when in Moab, there's more to do than just explore the national parks. Yes, they are fantastic, but Dead Horse Point, Highway 128, as well as mountain biking and other activities I'll allow you to discover, are also worth exploring. Before I wrap this up, I'm going to ask one more time for your help. This video took hundreds of hours to put together, and if you enjoyed it, and especially if it helped you plan your trip, please search around and click the subscribe button. It'll help me get to my goal of 100,000 subscribers so I can continue to dedicate the time to make these helpful programs. And please leave a comment. I read them all, and I answer those who subscribe. Now, as promised, I'm going to play a couple of videos that were produced by the Park Service. The first is about backpacking in the parks. The second describes the 100-mile-long White Rim Trail.
Few places can make a person feel as small as the massive landscapes of the Canyonlands Backcountry. Exploring on foot is an intimate experience in rugged terrain that can challenge even the most skilled backpacker. As you research and plan for your backcountry trip, here are a few tips we hope will reward your effort with an unforgettable wilderness experience. Weather conditions in the backcountry vary wildly, from oppressive heat to cold and snow, and sudden flash floods that can throw a wrench in even the best laid plans. Come to the park with a solid itinerary, but understand there may be closures, and park rangers can help answer questions and map out your options. Water is sacred in the desert, with sources few and far between. This presents the single biggest challenge for overnight backpacking itineraries. The best solution is to carry enough water for your entire trip from the trailhead. When in doubt, always carry more water. Carry an appropriate map and compass, and know how to use them. While GPS can be handy for route finding, electronics can fail, and there is often no cellular communication possible within the park. Satellite communicators can be used for backcountry emergencies. Know how and when to use them responsibly. The park backcountry is managed with both designated campsites and separate at-large camping zones to help facilitate a spectrum of wilderness experiences. In designated zones, camping is limited to the sites reserved in advance on your permit. This helps simplify the planning process and guarantees your specific itinerary. These defined sites are ideal for shade and shelter and clearly marked with boundary posts. By limiting your camp activities to the designated space, you will maximize your privacy and feeling of solitude and keep these iconic locations in pristine condition. Campfires and hammocks are not allowed. There is simply not enough wood, and trees can be easily damaged. At-large zones are not an alternative to designated sites, but rather an opportunity to explore the most remote and wild areas of the park. Here, there are no maintained trails, only primitive routes that can be tedious, challenging, and sometimes scary. This complex terrain is a canvas to design trips that will not only challenge your backcountry skill, but reward the effort with an unparalleled wilderness experience. Where trails don't exist, the key is to leave as few footprints as possible, focusing on slick rock and wash bottoms. If your route forces you onto biological soil crusts, back up, slow down, and find durable surfaces to connect your route. These soil crusts are complex living organisms and the foundation of the desert ecosystem. One careless step not only destroys these fragile organisms, but increases erosion and leads to unnecessary unofficial trails. In some areas, off-trail navigation is complex and challenging, and park rangers have strategically placed cairns to link up durable surfaces to make navigation easier. You might be tempted to kick over cairns or even build new ones. Don't do it. That's a job exclusively for the rangers. Finding a hard-earned campsite at the end of a long day is the ultimate backcountry reward, and the best sites are found, not made. Look for broad slick rock benches above the canyon floor, where you can find large, flat sites with massive views. These camps must be 1 mile from any road, not in alcoves or on biological soils, and 300 feet from archaeological sites and water sources. The dry soils of the desert do not decompose waste like forest or mountain soils. All garbage, both organic and inorganic, needs to be carried out. In designated sites, all human waste must be carried out of the backcountry using a disposable human waste bag. In at-large zones, we also recommend human waste bags, or dig an appropriate cat hole at least 300 feet away from water sources. Never burn or leave toilet paper in the backcountry. Use a small bag for your paper, and take it with you. Water in the desert is incredibly rare. These life-giving sources are critical for wildlife. Swimming, bathing, or using soaps to wash dishes will contaminate the source. Non-native invasive species are easily transported on boots, clothing, vehicles, and other gear. Clean your gear before entering and leaving the backcountry. Canyonlands is known for its remoteness and quiet solitude. Excessive noise diminishes that experience for everyone. Don't play music or yell echoes across the canyon, even if you think you are alone. Let the sounds of nature prevail. Canyonlands is a living cultural landscape with an archaeological record that spans thousands of years. Viewing these sites in person is a powerful and educational experience we are collectively responsible for protecting. Leave artifacts where you find them. Observe archaeological sites from a distance and do not enter the surrounding areas or structures. Many of these sites are of sacred importance to people living today. So please, visit with respect. Carefully consider what photographs you share on social media, and remember your digital footprint will remain long after you've left the park. Avoid posting tags with GPS coordinates and exact routes, and allow future visitors the joy of discovery. We hope these tips will help you have an unforgettable experience that builds a deep connection with Canyonlands. Immerse yourself in the wilderness, enjoy it with humility and respect, and preserve this experience for future generations. Traversing 1,000 feet below the island in the sky, the 100-mile White Rim Road is famous for some of the most rugged and expansive views anywhere on the Colorado Plateau. This is an adventure defined by solitude, wildness, and self-reliance. As you research and plan for the White Rim, here are a few tips that will help protect these unique qualities and reward your effort with an unforgettable backcountry experience. Under favorable weather conditions, the White Rim Road is moderately difficult for low-range four-wheel drive vehicles with high clearance. The steep and exposed climbs, deep sand, and technical rocks make the White Rim Loop a popular and challenging mountain bike ride as well. Most vehicles can make the loop in 2 to 3 days, and up to 4 on a bicycle. When developing your itinerary, know your skill and fitness level, as well as the mechanical condition and capabilities of your vehicle or bike. Make a realistic plan and stick to it. Check the weather and get road condition updates before heading out. Seasonal flooding and mud can make the route impassable. If the forecast looks spotty, consider turning around. Spring and fall are the most popular seasons to travel the White Rim, and temperatures can still hit over 100 degrees. The route is almost always exposed, and shade is at a premium. In winter, snow and ice can be a challenge. Vehicles should carry tire chains and a shovel, and be prepared with all the necessary tools for trailside repairs. Carry extra food, water, and clothing. Watch your time, your fuel, and your energy. There is no water along the White Rim Road. When in doubt, always carry more water. For mountain bike trips, we highly recommend a four-wheel drive support vehicle to carry water and equipment. The White Rim Road is well-signed and easy to follow. Your vehicle should never have to leave the road. Drive directly over obstacles like rocks, sand, and mud. Straddle ruts and washouts, even if they are wider than your vehicle. When passing, use an existing turnout, dry wash bottom, or solid rock surface to pass other vehicles, motorcycles, and bikes. There are limited spots for passing. You might have to back up to an appropriate spot. Be patient, watch your speed, and be courteous to other drivers and cyclists. In places like Murphy Hogback and Hardscrabble Hill, the road is only wide enough for one vehicle, and passing can be dangerous and nearly impossible. Be aware of challenges, drive slowly, and stop frequently to scout ahead on foot before committing to these technical sections. Tall vehicles like sprinter vans and trucks with campers or rooftop tents may have trouble navigating the overhead ledges upstream of Labyrinth Camp. Photo opportunities abound from the road. There is never any reason to take vehicles or bikes off-road for photos. Even at iconic locations like Monument Basin, the best views are directly on the road. Other popular roadside attractions are accessible on foot only. At Musselman Arch, leave your bike at the pullout and preserve the opportunity to view the arch undisturbed by not hiking, scrambling, or climbing on the arch. When hiking, always walk on marked trails, solid rock, or in sandy washes. Biological soil crust and desert vegetation is very fragile. These soil crusts are complex living organisms and the foundation of the desert ecosystem. One careless step not only destroys these fragile organisms, but increases erosion and leads to unnecessary unofficial trails. Motorcycles are permitted along the White Rim. Group size is limited to minimize sound and wildlife disruptions and keep dust down as a courtesy to others. Camping is limited to the sites reserved in advance on your permit. This helps simplify the planning process and guarantees your specific itinerary. These sites are maintained by the park, clearly marked with boundary posts, and optimized for privacy, solitude, and expansive views. By limiting your camp activities to the designated space, you can help keep these iconic locations in pristine condition. Campfires and hammocks are not allowed. There is simply not enough wood, and trees can be easily damaged. Use park-provided toilets for solid human waste, or remove it in toilet systems. If you have to go during the day, plan on utilizing existing toilets. Don't throw trash in the pit toilets. All garbage, both organic and inorganic, needs to be carried out. Make sure all trash and food is secure. Ravens and other animals are attracted to food and trash and will spread it. Food tarps make it easy to clean up microtrash and food crumbs. Carry a trash bag in your vehicle and pick up litter, even if it's not yours. Make one last sweep of your camp and leave it better than you found it. Canyonlands is known for its remoteness and quiet solitude. Excessive noise diminishes that experience for everyone. Don't play music or yell echoes across the canyon, even if you think you are alone. Avoid revving your engine or driving a poorly tuned vehicle. Let the sounds of nature prevail. If you are patient and maybe a bit lucky, Canyonlands can offer amazing wildlife viewing opportunities. Bighorn sheep are particularly sensitive to loud vehicles and human presence. When observing wildlife, maintain your distance and remain quiet. Canyonlands is a living cultural landscape with an archaeological record that spans thousands of years. Viewing these sites in person is a powerful and educational experience we are collectively responsible for protecting. Leave artifacts where you find them. Observe archaeological sites from a distance and do not enter the surrounding areas or structures. Many of these sites are of sacred importance to people living today. So please, visit with respect. Carefully consider what photographs you share on social media, and remember your digital footprint will remain long after you've left the park. Avoid posting tags with GPS coordinates and exact routes, and allow future visitors the joy of discovery. We hope these tips will help you have an unforgettable experience that builds a deep connection with Canyonlands. Immerse yourself in the wilderness, enjoy it with humility and respect, and preserve this experience for future generations. The backcountry roads of the Needles and the Maze lead to some of the most remote and beautiful corners of the Colorado Plateau. This is an adventure defined by solitude, wildness, and self-reliance. As you research and plan your trip, here are a few tips that will help protect these unique qualities and reward your effort with an unforgettable backcountry experience. Roads in the Needles will challenge drivers with steep grades, off-camber drops, and paint-scraping narrows. Elephant Hill has a turn so tight it can only be navigated in reverse. Roads in the Maze are equally challenging, but are even more remote. The stretch from Teapot Rock Campsite to the Land of Standing Rocks is notorious for damaging vehicles and stranding the unaware. All of the Needles and Maze roads require a high-clearance, low-range, four-wheel drive vehicle. If you end up stuck or broken down, towing fees will cost over $1,000. This is not a place for inexperienced drivers to test their skills. When developing your itinerary, make a realistic plan and stick to it. Check the weather and get road condition updates before heading out. Spring and fall are the most popular seasons for backcountry travel in the park, and temperatures can still hit over 100 degrees. Seasonal flooding and mud can make the roads impassable, especially on the Flint Trail, where the road traverses slopes of clay. In winter, snow and ice can be a challenge. Water sources are limited and not near any campsites in the Maze and Needles, so bring more than you need. In Salt Creek, Horse Canyon, and Lavender Canyon, know how to navigate quicksand and deep sand and be ready to self-rescue if you get in trouble. Always travel in pairs and have a strategy for self-rescue and the skills to make basic repairs. Every vehicle should have at least one full-size spare, a shovel, high-lift jack, and chains for all 4 tires. All roads in Canyonlands are well signed and easy to follow. Your vehicle should never have to leave the road. Drive directly over obstacles like rocks, sand, and mud. Straddle ruts and washouts even if they are wider than your vehicle. There are limited spots for passing, but you should never drive over vegetation or off the road. Use an existing turnout, dry wash bottom, or solid rock surface to pass other vehicles. You might have to back up to an appropriate spot. Be courteous to other drivers and cyclists. Drive slowly and stop frequently to scout ahead on foot before committing to difficult sections. Motorcycles are permitted on backcountry roads. Group size is limited to minimize sound and wildlife disruptions, and keep dust down as a courtesy to others. Photo opportunities abound from the road. There is never any reason to take vehicles or bikes off-road for photos. Visit roadside attractions on foot only, and travel on durable surfaces. When hiking, always walk on marked trails, solid rock, or in sandy washes. Biological soil crust and desert vegetation is very fragile. These soil crusts are complex living organisms and the foundation of the desert ecosystem. One careless step not only destroys these fragile organisms, but increases erosion and leads to unnecessary unofficial trails. Camping is limited to the sites reserved in advance on your permit. This helps simplify the planning process and guarantees your specific itinerary. These sites are maintained by the park, clearly marked with boundary posts, and optimized for privacy, solitude, and expansive views. By limiting your camp activities to the designated space, you can help keep these iconic locations in pristine condition. Campfires and hammocks are not allowed. There is simply not enough wood, and trees can be easily damaged. In remote areas of the park, like the maze, all users are required to carry out their solid human waste. You can use commercially available human waste disposal bags or other toilet systems that securely contain human waste in a sealed container. In some Needles campsites, you may use park-provided toilets for solid human waste. Don't throw trash in the pit toilets. All garbage, both organic and inorganic, needs to be carried out. Make sure all trash and food is secure. Ravens and other animals are attracted to food and trash and will spread it. Food tarps make it easy to clean up microtrash and food crumbs. Carry a trash bag in your vehicle and pick up litter, even if it's not yours. Make one last sweep of your camp and leave it better than you found it. Canyonlands is known for its remoteness and quiet solitude. Excessive noise diminishes that experience for everyone. Don't play music or yell echoes across the canyon, even if you think you are alone. Avoid revving your engine or driving a poorly tuned vehicle. Let the sounds of nature prevail. If you are patient and maybe a bit lucky, Canyonlands can offer amazing wildlife viewing opportunities. Bighorn sheep are particularly sensitive to loud vehicles and human presence. When observing wildlife, maintain your distance and remain quiet. Canyonlands is a living cultural landscape with an archaeological record that spans thousands of years. Viewing these sites in person is a powerful and educational experience we are collectively responsible for protecting. Leave artifacts where you find them. Observe archaeological sites from a distance and do not enter the surrounding areas or structures. Many of these sites are of sacred importance to people living today. So please, visit with respect. Carefully consider what photographs you share on social media, and remember your digital footprint will remain long after you've left the park. Avoid posting tags with GPS coordinates and exact routes, and allow future visitors the joy of discovery. We hope these tips will help you have an unforgettable experience that builds a deep connection with Canyonlands. Immerse yourself in the wilderness, enjoy it with humility and respect, and preserve this experience for future generations.
Thanks again for watching.